Okay, you know how every year they announce those Nobel Prize winners?
Uh,
Like all those scientists and writers and people doing amazing things, they get the medals and everything.
oh, yeah.
Well, we're going to kind of dive into that whole Nobel Prize thing.
Okay.
But not really about the prizes themselves,
Well-
more like who's been winning them over time.
Okay.
Specifically, we're looking at women.
Gotcha.
And how many women have won these big awards over like the past 100 years or so?
Interesting.
Yeah, so let's just jump right in. Here it is.
In the data skies, we take our flight. Trends and numbers come to life. Colors and charts, they dance and play. Showing truth in a visual way. In GenderDecoded, we uncover truths and stories like no other. In the data waves we find the secret maps of humankind.
Imagine we're looking at a timeline of all the winners. From the very first one, way back in 1901, all the way to today.
Okay.
What do you think jumps out if we filter it by gender?
Well, the first thing you'd notice is a pretty stark pattern in those early years. I mean, it's overwhelmingly male, especially when you look at the science categories.
Yeah, it's almost like you're looking at this sea of faces, and they're all, well, not very diverse, to put it mildly. But why was that the case?
It's really important to consider the historical context here. Back then, women often faced incredible hurdles when it came to higher education, let alone even getting a chance to do groundbreaking research.
Right.
It wasn't just a lack of encouragement. Sometimes it was outright barriers preventing them from even entering those spaces.
That's a really good point. So it's not just about individual brilliance, but also the opportunities that were available or not available at the time.
Yeah.
When do we start to see things shift even a little bit?
So around the 1930s and into the 50s, we start to see the first female laureates kind of emerge.
Okay.
Interestingly, literature and peace seem to be the areas where they break through first.
That's interesting. Any theories on why those fields might have been easier for women to gain recognition in, at least compared to the hard sciences?
Societal perceptions likely played a role, what was considered appropriate work for women back then.
Right.
Literature and peace efforts might have been seen as aligning more with those traditional roles.
That makes sense. It's like these invisible societal forces were shaping the landscape of achievement, even at the highest level.
Yeah.
But it's still incredible to see those first women breaking through, defying those expectations.
Absolutely. Their courage and their contributions really paved the way for others to follow.
Okay, so we've got this male-dominated landscape in the early 20th century, with a few incredible women starting to make their mark, particularly in literature and peace. What happens as we move into the latter half of the century?
Things start to get even more interesting. From the 60s to the 80s, the presence of female laureates in those two categories becomes even more pronounced. The Peace Prize, especially, really starts to highlight the incredible work that women were doing in humanitarian efforts and social causes.
That's powerful. It's like the world was finally starting to wake up to the fact that women were making significant contributions in areas that had for too long been overlooked.
Exactly. And in literature, you see this steady stream of just remarkable female authors being recognized. It suggests that, at least in some creative fields, the doors were opening wider for women's voices and perspectives.
Now, this is where I got really hooked on the data, the 1990s.
Okay.
We start to see this new trend emerge, particularly in the sciences. Shared prizes between male and female laureates. What's going on here?
This is where it gets really fascinating. It's not just about more women being recognized, it's about how they're being recognized.
Right.
These shared prizes point toward a shift in the scientific culture itself, a move towards collaboration, and a recognition that groundbreaking work often comes from teams, not just individuals.
So it's not just a single woman breaking through. It's women being integral parts of these incredible research teams that are pushing the boundaries of knowledge.
Precisely. And that's a significant shift. It suggests a growing awareness that diverse teams with different perspectives and approaches are often the key to solving those complex scientific challenges.
Okay, you mentioned that these shared prizes are particularly evident in certain scientific fields.
Yeah.
Any specific examples that come to mind?
Absolutely. The 2009 Nobel Prize in Chemistry is a great example.
Okay.
It was awarded jointly to Ada Yonath, Venkatraman Ramakrishnan, and Thomas A. Stites for their groundbreaking work on the structure and function of the ribosome, which is essential for protein synthesis in all living organisms.
Wow. So Dr. Yonath's contributions were absolutely crucial to unlocking the secrets of this fundamental building block of life.
Mm.
And it wasn't just about her individual brilliance. It was about her being part of this collaborative team that brought together different expertise to achieve something truly remarkable. That's inspiring. What happens as we move past the 2000 mark?
We see even more of an increase in female laureates across multiple categories.
Okay.
It's like crossing a threshold. And it aligns with those broader societal shifts we talked about earlier.
Right.
The rise of gender equality movements, increased access to higher education for women, and a greater focus on promoting diversity in academia and scientific research.
It's like all these forces are coming together to create real measurable change, even at the highest levels of achievement. But are there still areas where we see that gender gap persisting?
Even with all this progress, some fields still lag behind. Take economics, for example.
Okay.
It was introduced later in 1969, and it initially mirrored that male dominance we saw in the early days of the other science prizes.
So even though it's a newer category, it still seems to be struggling to catch up with the changing landscape of gender representation. Why do you think that is?
There are likely several factors at play. Systemic biases within the field itself could be a contributing factor. Are there enough female mentors to guide and support aspiring female economists? Are research priorities skewed towards topics that have traditionally been dominated by men?
Right.
These are important questions to consider.
It's a reminder that progress isn't always linear. Even when we see these positive trends, there are still pockets of resistance, areas where we need to keep pushing for change. Okay. I'm excited to see where this data takes us next. We've journeyed through this pretty stark landscape of male dominance, witnessed the emergence of pioneering women, and seen a shift toward collaboration and a more inclusive approach to scientific discovery. What awaits us in the 2020s?
Well, you might be surprised by just how much things have accelerated in recent years. The 2020s are showing us something really exciting. Even more female laureates in the sciences and in fields like physics that were historically very male-dominated.
That's incredible. It sounds like we're finally starting to see some real momentum. But is it too early to celebrate? Are there still challenges we need to be aware of as we move forward?
We'll definitely dig into that in the next part of our deep dive. It's important to remember that progress is fragile.
Okay.
It's not about reaching a quota or checking a box. It's about creating lasting systemic change that ensures true equity and opportunity for all.
I like that. Progress is fragile. It's something we need to nurture and protect. So for our listeners, hang tight. We're going to take a closer look at what's driving these trends and explore what the future might hold for gender representation among Nobel Prize winners.
Welcome back to our deep dive. We've just explored some fascinating trends in Nobel Prize winners by gender, and now it's time to dig a little deeper and try to understand what might be driving these shifts.
Okay, so we've seen this journey from a pretty homogeneous landscape in those early Nobel years to a more diverse and collaborative picture today. But what's behind these changes? Is it just a reflection of broader societal shifts? Or are there other forces at play?
It's certainly more nuanced than just mirroring society, although those broader shifts definitely lay the groundwork. Think about access to education for women. As that expanded, more women were able to enter fields like science and research, which naturally leads to more potential for recognition down the line.
Right, it's like you need to have a foot in the door before you can even start climbing the ladder, so to speak.
Yeah.
But even with more women in these fields, why are we seeing this particular trend towards shared prizes, especially in the sciences?
One really interesting angle here is the role of mentorship in networks. Historically, women in academia often lacked access to the same kind of support systems that their male colleagues had. Think about those informal networks. The mentors who champion your work, the collaborators who help you push boundaries, those were often less accessible to women.
So it wasn't just about individual talent, but also about having the right people in your corner, the ones who open doors and amplify your work.
Exactly. But as more women have broken into these fields, they've become those mentors, those champions for the next generation. It's like a ripple effect where success breeds more success.
That's a powerful image, a virtuous cycle of support and inspiration. And it makes me wonder about the role of funding. Does that play a role in these gender trends?
Absolutely. Research funding often reflects the biases and priorities of the time. Historically, fields dominated by men tended to receive more funding and support. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The areas that get more resources are the ones that are more likely to produce breakthroughs that are recognized with awards.
So even if women were doing incredible work, they might not have had the same level of resources to pursue it, which put them at a disadvantage when it came to those big, splashy discoveries.
Precisely. But thankfully, there's growing awareness of this issue, and many funding agencies are now making a conscious effort to promote gender equity in their grant programs. They're recognizing that talent is everywhere and that we need to create a level playing field if we want to see the full potential of scientific discovery.
It's like they're finally realizing that investing in diverse minds leads to a richer landscape of ideas and innovations. Okay, we've talked about societal shifts, mentorship, and funding. What about those less tangible factors, like societal perceptions and expectations? How do you think those influence who gets recognized with the Nobel Prize?
Remember, the Nobel Prizes are ultimately decided by committees of people, and these committees, even with the best intentions, are still products of their time. Their views on what constitutes worthy work, what defines genius, are shaped by the cultural norms and stereotypes that exist in the world around them.
So even if those committees are striving for objectivity, they're still influenced by those unconscious biases, those ingrained ideas about what a Nobel Prize-winning scientist should look like.
It's a complex issue,
Yeah.
but it's definitely something to consider. Think about it this way. In those early years, when the sciences were heavily male-dominated, was it harder for a woman's work to be seen as truly groundbreaking simply because it didn't fit the prevailing image of a scientific genius?
That's a really thought-provoking question. It's like those expectations create an invisible barrier that women have to overcome, not just in terms of doing the work, but also in terms of how that work is perceived.
Exactly. And it's not just about those external perceptions. Think about the internal pressures women might face, the societal messaging that told them that science wasn't for them, or that they should focus on more feminine pursuits. Those internalized beliefs can be incredibly powerful and can influence the choices women make in their careers.
It's like a double whammy. External barriers and internal doubts working together to limit opportunities. But thankfully, it seems like those perceptions are shifting.
They are, albeit slowly. As society evolves, as we challenge those outdated gender stereotypes, the Nobel committees themselves become more diverse and more open to recognizing a wider range of achievements.
It's like the definition of genius is expanding, becoming more inclusive, more reflective of the true diversity of human talent.
And that's a positive trend that we're seeing not just in the Nobel Prizes, but in many fields. As more women rise to positions of leadership, as their voices are amplified, they're changing the narrative of what's possible and what's worthy of recognition.
This conversation has been so insightful, and I'm already thinking about all the implications for the future. Do you think these trends will continue? Will we see even more female laureates in the years to come?
I definitely think so. As long as we continue to dismantle those systemic barriers, challenge those unconscious biases, create opportunities and support networks, I believe we'll see a Nobel Prize landscape that is truly reflective of the incredible talent and potential that exists in women around the world. And I think that's something worth driving for.
I couldn't agree more. It's not about quotas or tokenism. It's about creating a world where everyone, regardless of gender, has the opportunity to pursue their passions, contribute their brilliance, and be recognized for their achievements.
Exactly. And in that world, the Nobel Prize wouldn't just be a symbol of individual achievement, but a reflection of our collective progress toward a more equitable and just society.
That's a beautiful vision for the future. Now, before we get too carried away with our hopes and dreams, let's bring it back down to earth for a moment. We've talked about all these external factors that might be contributing to these trends. But what about internal factors? What role do individual choices and aspirations play in this story?
That's a really important point. While it's crucial to acknowledge the systemic barriers and societal pressures that women face, it's also important to recognize the agency and resilience of the women who've defied those odds.
So it's not just about the barriers being removed, it's also about the women who choose to leap over them, to push those boundaries and chase their dreams despite the challenges.
Absolutely. For every woman who's been awarded a Nobel Prize, there are countless others who may not have received that specific recognition, but who have nonetheless made groundbreaking contributions to their fields.
It's a reminder that success can take many forms. And that impact isn't always measured by awards or accolades. It's about the passion, the dedication, the unwavering pursuit of knowledge and excellence, regardless of external validation.
Exactly. And that's what I find so inspiring about these women. They didn't wait for the world to change. They changed it themselves. They pursued their passions, challenged the status quo, and paved the way for future generations to follow.
That's a powerful message. It's a call to action for all of us to embrace our own agency, challenge those limiting beliefs, and create a world where brilliance knows no gender, no boundaries, and no limitations.
And that's where we'll pick up in the final part of our deep dive. We'll explore the stories of some of these extraordinary women who've broken barriers, defied expectations, and left an indelible mark on their respective fields. So stay tuned.
Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into the world of Nobel Prizes and gender trends. We've covered a lot of ground from those early stark patterns to the really exciting shifts that are happening right now. But you know what always brings this kind of data to life for me? The actual stories of the people behind it.
I couldn't agree more. It's one thing to talk about trends and statistics, but it's quite another to hear about the individual journeys, the struggles, and the triumphs of these remarkable individuals.
So for this last part, let's put aside the spreadsheets and the graphs for a bit and just dive into some of those stories. Where do we even begin with such a wealth of inspiring figures?
Well, there's one name that simply can't be ignored when discussing women and Nobel Prizes. Marie Curie. She's practically a legend at this point.
Oh, absolutely. Marie Curie is a personal hero of mine. Not only was she the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, but she won it twice in different scientific fields.
That's right. Her first Nobel Prize was in physics in 1903, shared with her husband Pierre Curie and Henri Becquerel for their work on radioactivity.
And then just a few years later, in 1911, she wins the Nobel Prize in chemistry for her discovery of polonium and radium. It's mind-boggling to think about how groundbreaking her work was, especially in a time when women in science face so much resistance.
Her contributions were absolutely foundational to our understanding of the atom and paved the way for countless advancements in medicine, energy, and other fields. Think about the impact of X-rays in healthcare. Her research played a crucial role in that.
It's amazing to think about how her discoveries continue to ripple through time, shaping the world we live in today. And beyond her scientific brilliance, she was a trailblazer for women in academia, proving that they could not only participate in these fields, but excel in them.
Speaking of trailblazers, there's another Nobel laureate whose story resonates deeply with people around the world, Malala Yousafzai.
Oh, Malala. Her courage and determination are simply awe-inspiring. To be the youngest ever Nobel Prize winner receiving the Peace Prize in 2014 for her advocacy for girls' education. It's a testament to the power of one voice to spark a global movement.
Imagine facing threats and violence from the Taliban simply for wanting to go to school and advocating for other girls to have that same right. Malala didn't back down, and her story became a rallying cry for educational equality around the world.
She showed us that even in the face of immense danger, one person's voice can ignite a global movement for change. And that's something we need to remember, especially when we feel overwhelmed by the challenges facing the world today.
Now let's shift gears a bit and venture into the realm of literature. We can't talk about influential female Nobel laureates without mentioning Toni Morrison.
Toni Morrison. Her words have this incredible power to move you, to make you think deeply about the world and our place in it.
She received the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1993 for her novels that explored themes of race, identity, and the complexities of the American experience, particularly from the perspective of Black women. Her writing wasn't just beautiful, it was deeply insightful and challenging, forcing readers to confront uncomfortable truths.
It's like she gave a voice to those who had been silenced for far too long, weaving stories that resonated with people from all walks of life. And through her words, she sparked important conversations about race, equality, and the need for social justice.
She was a master storyteller, and her work continues to inspire and challenge readers today.
Okay, we've explored some of the iconic figures from the past, but I'm curious to hear about some of the more recent female Nobel laureates, the women who are shaping the world right now.
Well, a duo that comes to mind immediately is Emmanuelle Charpentier and Jennifer A. Doudna, who were jointly awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2020. They were recognized for their groundbreaking work on CRISPR-Cas9, a revolutionary gene editing tool.
Ah, yes, CRISPR. I remember when that discovery broke, it felt like the future had arrived.
Yeah.
This technology has the potential to transform so many aspects of our lives, from curing diseases to developing new sustainable agriculture methods.
Exactly, and it was a collaboration between these two brilliant women, each bringing their unique expertise to the table, that led to this incredible breakthrough. It's a testament to the power of teamwork and diversity in scientific discovery.
It's like they unlocked a whole new toolbox for scientists, opening up possibilities that we could only dream of before. It's both exhilarating and a bit daunting to think about the potential impact of their work.
It definitely raises important ethical considerations, but there's no denying that their discovery has ushered in a new era in genetic research.
Well, on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've journeyed through the data, explored potential causes, and celebrated some of the incredible women who have made their mark on Nobel Prize history.
And what have we learned from all of this? We've seen that progress is possible even in fields that were once heavily male-dominated. We've seen the power of mentorship, collaboration, and challenging societal norms. And we've seen that the stories behind the data are often the most inspiring and thought-provoking.
What I'm taking away from this is a sense of hope, a belief that we can create a future where brilliant minds, regardless of gender, have the opportunity to shine.
And as we wrap up, I want to encourage you, our listener, to continue exploring the stories of these and other remarkable women. Delve into their work, their challenges, their triumphs, and let their journeys inspire you to pursue your own passions and contribute to a world where brilliance knows no boundaries. Thanks for joining us.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll bring this deep dive to a close. Thanks for joining us on this fascinating exploration.